Hi folks, good evening, and how are all of you doing? I'm seeing Anne, I'm seeing Vicky Ann, I'm seeing Madam Moringa, Jane of All Trades, Camille Dean, Aaron, Mr. Cello, Roz, Rena, Crizel, Lenleys, lots of you on the live this evening. Hi Sheldon, hi Delia, hi Janelle Elspeth, and I'm seeing that folks from Facebook and from YouTube are on. Hi Chantel. Hi Jason. Jason, what time is it by you? Because it's 7 o'clock here. So you're what? 4 hours ahead, 5 hours ahead, 6 hours ahead. We're looking like in your neck of the woods. Hi Marcelin, Keon. Ian, what part of the world are you now? And was the time there? Hi Camille, hi Petra, hi Mary, Agnita, Sarah, Hassani, Monifi over in Tobago. Monifi, is it raining there as much as it is raining here, or the weather a little nicer? Hi Debbie, hi Leonard, hi Donna. So, good evening to everybody, and hi. So, before I get into the meat of the matter in the lives and them, I've seen somebody say, right, Jason, say 5 hours ahead. So that means it is midnight. So, right, 1 minute after midnight. So, good morning to you. Hi, Terrence, long time no see. Hi, Gertrude. Hi, Lincoln. Hi, Marcia. Hi, Maria, Charles, Gordon. Who else? Neil. Okay, so it's 1 a.m. where Ian is. So, Ian is even further away than Jason is. So those of you that are up, thank you for being up. And well, I know it's late where you guys are, so thanks for the support. Patricia, by the end of the live, I'm going to talk about that, and I will explain how soon you will be able to get things like merch and that kind of thing, right? So I'm taking a break by the end of this live. So when we finish this evening, I'm taking a hiatus, and during the time of the hiatus is to get a couple things in gear, like merch for you guys to be able to purchase, so you could flash your new source bling, whether it's mugs, t-shirts, and I'm thinking water bottles. So mugs, t-shirts, and recyclable water bottles is what I focused on, and I will make it available on my page on Facebook and on Instagram for you to be able to reach out to me to purchase whoever it is interested in purchasing from me. And remember, you don't have to send me $50, right? It's entirely up to you to purchase where you need to purchase. Hi Debbie D, is 7:03 where you are? You are such a clown. It's 7:03 where I am. So my darlings and them right outside the door, so they might start barking at some point in time. So I have a question for you. When Philip and others do lives, what did us do on their lives? I don't know, because I don't watch. So people tell me all the time, this one doing a live, this one doing a vlog, whatever. But I don't necessarily look for a range of reasons. In some instances, I'm blocked from pages and profiles. In other instances, I don't care. But now I'm wondering, because when I have to do a live, I'm preparing sometimes days in advance, sitting down, thinking about, okay, which news stories for the week should I analyze, what people want to talk about, what they're buzzing about. In many instances, when I sit down to finally compile, put together the things I'm going to talk about on a live, is so much I have to actually cut down. So, for instance, some of you all know there's what appears to be a new scam, right? A new Ponzi triangle pyramid. That's what I mean. Pyramid scheme thing going on that we started talking about on my page a couple of days ago. And plenty of people was up in the fields defending it. And I said, oh, that'll be a good topic to do a live on, or to at least raise in a live. Not like a whole live about the issue with, you know, what I think is the next pyramid scheme here. But when I got around to planning what I'm going to discuss this evening, I just couldn't fit it in. Like there was no space to fit it in. So yes, Marco. I want to talk about Marcos, or rather, I want to talk about businesses, in quotation marks, like the type of business he says that he's doing, because I feel more of us need to be aware of how social media can be abused. Winston is asking if I'm live on YouTube. Yep. Yes, Winston. You go, you look for my channel. So now is a good way to plug it. You go and you look for News Source on YouTube, and you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. So go and do that now, Winston. So that way, whenever I'm going to do a live, you will get the notification on your device that Rhoda is going to be bringing excellence on YouTube this evening or this morning or tomorrow or whenever, right? Good. So nobody seems to know a little. Oh, I've seen somebody saying they just talk trippedness. Think a Philip version of Ian Allen. Well, Gil, I have never actually looked at an Ian Allen program in its entirety. I've looked at clips, and that's because I know Ian since he was my neighbor in Central, and then his name was Benji, and Benji was always just weird. So I can't see myself sitting down and watching Benji for an hour or 2 hours or whatever. So, good night. Let me jump into this live. I have plenty of things I want to talk about. So let me start.
Even if it is, find the plan, create a plan, the strategy or whatever. Bring it here once you get approval. Whether it is, you see, you have 13 people now. You might just need 5 or 7 to do strict PR, so you could use some to do some propaganda. Whether they're going to use fake profiles, whether they're going to use their own profiles, whatever they do. And what we will have to consider is finding a way to employ people on the THA side. Could be menial tasks.
We don't have to pay. Yeah, most of them kind of got away to Chanel, and we found that.
And most of them kind of get employed already.
Yes. So that's the others who not employed to bring them in, because they are happy to do the thing on the side voluntarily. You know, once we employ them 8 to 4 in a lucrative.
So they get income.
Yes, that is what we know. So we will organize.
And that will help. That will help, even with as I was indicating. With the challenge you raised in terms of how to organize are responding to the moves in Trinidad, that can help in shaping the narrative. Because about shaping the narratives. I don't want us to stop campaigning and then switch it back.
You all heard that voice clip early on in the week, right? I'm going to play it again because I want to talk about it, one. And I also need to clarify a couple things, because my name was jumping up in that because people were comparing me to that, and I need to discuss it and discuss it properly. So we're going back to it.
Even if it is, find the plan, create a plan, the strategy or whatever. Bring it here once you get approval. Whether it is, you see, you have 13 people now. You might just need 5 or 7 to do strict PR, so you could use some to do some propaganda. Whether they're going to use fake profiles, whether they're going to use their own profiles, whatever they do. And what we will have to consider is finding a way to employ people on the THA side. Could be menial tasks.
We don't have to pay. Yeah, most of them kind of got away to Chanel, and we found that.
And most of them kind of get employed already.
Yes. So that's the others who not employed to bring them in, because they are happy to do the thing on the side voluntarily. You know, once we employ them 8 to 4 in a lucrative.
So they get income.
Yes, Yes, that is what's going on. So we will organize
and that will help. That will help even with as I was indicating, with the challenge you raised in terms of how to organize responding to the moves in Trinidad. That can help in shaping the narrative. Because about shaping the narratives. I don't want us to stop campaigning and then switch it back.
So a couple things that we need to make very clear. Government ministries and state enterprises, because there's where I want to start. Government ministries and state enterprises invariably in their organization structure have arrangements for communication staff, right? Let me make that absolutely clear. Most of you here on the live that are public servants, you are aware of this. Most ministries have communications departments. All state entities and state enterprises will have communications departments or at least communications officers. So there is no situation where any state organization, at least there's no state organization, no ministry, no municipal corporation, no aspect of government that I am aware of now that does not have communications departments, or at least one member of staff, and certainly more than one member of staff that is hired for the purpose of communications. Now, the word propaganda often gets a bad rap, but propaganda means putting out information that positions you in a particular perspective, right? So, may I have an issue with any state organization deciding we have a communications unit, we have a communications department, or we have a communications person, and we are going to make sure that that communications person, unit, department puts out our side of the story. Because for the other side of the story to come out, that's whenever there is an other side to a story, that's the responsibility of media. And remember, media here, as we always talking about freedom of the press and the responsibility of the fourth estate. So I don't expect that any organization, any office, any building, I don't think any company at all going to put out negative information about itself. It will always want to put out positive information. And to ensure that public money, people funds not being abused, the organization structure of all of these organizations, all of these state boards, ministries allow for a communications department. If that is folly, because it sounds like folly and it sounds like Zorisha, if that is indeed folly, the Chief Secretary of the THA, there are a number of questions that they need to come out and answer and clear up for the public, right? Because if you already have a communications department or unit inside the THA, why do you need to hire new or different persons to do whatever it is you're ostensibly hiring them to do, and then have them set up things like fake profiles to go onto social media to shape the narrative? It is very possible with the actual communication staff, the official communication staff that you are meant to hire, that you could cleverly and credibly have that staff put out information about all of the work that you're doing at the THA or under the umbrella of the THA for the people of Tobago, well, Trinidad and Tobago, more so Tobago than Trinidad, to be aware of what you're doing. And it doesn't only have to be social media or traditional media. So when I hear this voice clip and how it's sounding to me is, one, they already have people hired, right? I don't know if those persons that they have hired are people that working in communications at the THA or working in different parts of the THA, but they also go in to pay them to do propaganda on social media. I don't know. That's not clear. There's a lot in the clip that is not clear at all. What is pertinent to me at this point is that it seems as if the person speaking on that clip planning to either A, hire people and have those people run fake profiles and push a particular type of propaganda on social media, or those persons are already hired within the THA and they're going to be paid extra to again push propaganda via official or unofficial social media profiles. Why is that necessary? And apart from why is that necessary, maybe you feel you're beginning to lose the thread in the public domain. So you're not getting mainstream media to push your stories in a particular way, people not believing what is coming out your mouth, and that could be for any number of reasons. So let's say that what you're attempting to do is acceptable. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, what you're attempting to do is acceptable. How can you be doing that with public monies? How can you decide that you want to hire people for the purpose of propaganda via fake social media accounts? What part of the THA organization structure allows for that? Because I real confused. So I saw people all over social media saying, well, I hired for the same reason. And I said, this is one of the first things I had to tackle the next time I do a live. I don't work for a political party, right? In that conversation that we just heard, we had a conversation between two people and they were conflating the THA and a political party. They were pretending that putting out information about the THA is the same thing as putting out information about a political party. Now, the two things can overlap. But if you're hiring people to do work for the THA, then they are meant to be doing work for the THA and about the THA. If you are hiring people to do work for a political party, the political party has to pay them. And there are plenty of people on social media that's be giving them out all kind of liberty when they're talking about me. There are a number of things that they will never be able to say. I don't cover party related events, whether it is UNC, NTA, PDP, PEP, TPP, whoever it is, PNM, whoever. I don't cover party specific events. The most that will happen is if there are meetings taking place and there's social media links, I will share the links to meetings. And that is, of course, if I think the meeting will be useful and informative in any form or fashion. So my personal choice there, right? But there's no point in time when I have been paid by a ministry to do anything outside of focus on that, Ministry or state entity. So when I listened to this message. I thought, but it's the craziest thing, the absolute craziest thing. How do you sit down and have a conversation? Two persons, one sounding like the chief secretary and the other one sounding like the secretary for education. How do you sit and discuss and decide that within the org structure of the THA, you're going to hire people to promote propaganda for a political party? And that is where things start to conflate and get gray and get messy. You have to be able to distinguish and make a very clear line about the difference between a government organization and a political party. Must be able to do that. And that is where that goes wrong. So whoever is the voices on that voice note, and here's a longer voice note. I hear the voice note much longer than that, and there's much more details than that. So whoever talking on that voice note and discussing taking state funds to pay people to have fake identities on social media to push propaganda and shape the narrative, and of course twist things up for the listening public, I think you've lost sight of what the communications from a state entity is supposed to do. Because a state organization ain't supposed to be twisting any narrative. It's supposed to be putting out information for the public to digest. It needs to make information available as readily and easily and digestible as possible. It needs to make sure that the public understands policies, that the public understands how to access goods and services, but not to be twisting and shaping no narrative via fake profiles. That's my 2 cents day, and I hope I make it clear for everybody why that voice note real problematic. And since the voice note come out, you can't hear nothing from the THA. The THA like it have a sore throat. Whole week the THA have pip. And Farley is an articulate fella. So I would think that Farley and them could come out and explain exactly what is going on with this voice note. Is it you or not you? Is it your Secretary for Education or not your Secretary for Education? Who and whom having this conversation? And is it really and truly a situation where you are conflating a state organization, right, at the House of Assembly, with a political party? You can't do that. Can't do that at all. That voice note, that real problems there. Real problems there. So that was the first thing. What's the next thing I want to talk to all about? Silk. I think that's the next thing I want to talk about. Where the or am I going to? Nah, maybe I shouldn't do silk just yet. Maybe I should. I don't know. I'm confused at this stage. So one of the reasons I wanted to talk about was that them shaping a narrative by saying you're being paid by NLCB for the PNM. What say you? Tobago Love. All right, let me put you up on the screen here so people see the comment. So Tobago Love has said them shaping the narrative by saying you're being paid by the NLCB for the PNM. What say you? Tobago Love, clearly you are new to these parts. The last time I had anything resembling a contract with the NLCB would have been May 2020. We are now in the last week of May 2023. So, if people in Tobago are still saying that I am receiving money from the NLCB for the purposes of propaganda for political party, or the real behind the times, I fed up answer this question. I fed up clear this up for the public. Get with the times. Right? That's the most I can tell you at this point. Right. Silk. So let me tell all you why I wanted to talk about silk. Because, you know, there was already bacchanal in the last couple of weeks about who gets silk, who ain't get silk, and then who get honorary degree, who ain't get honorary degree. The Express has a reporter whose name is, has a columnist, whose name is Orrin Gordon. Orrin Gordon is a communications consultant. And Orrin did a column for the Express about 2 weeks ago. It might be, about 2 or 3 Wednesdays ago. And in the column, he called for the revamping or the amending of the entire Constitution on the basis of what was going on with silk and who getting silk and who not getting silk. And me and Orrin end up in a little bacchanal on Facebook because a friend of mine, or somebody who's on my friends list, shared the article. I read the article and I said that the article was thin on information. Because to me, if you're going to criticize the silk process, if you're going to talk about whether the process is transparent or not transparent, and also if you are going to argue that the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago needs revamping and amending on the basis of something like the awarding of silk process, then I would expect stupid me would expect that you, Orrin, would in your column outline for your reader what the process for awarding silk is. So your girl takes herself, click on the link, read the story, read the article twice, because I say I must be missing something here, right? How you go have a whole article and the article does not at any point in time outline what exactly is the process. Because I find if you're going to be criticizing, then be clear on what you're criticizing. So let's take a look at what the process is. So this is a notice in the Gazette, the Trinidad and Tobago Gazette from 1964. Because the first time the process for the award of silk was put out was 1964, right? So in 1964, this was the process. And the process was a very limited process. If you think that you're ready to apply to be a Queen's Counsel, because it would have been called Queen's Counsel then, right. So the procedure is thus, right? Appointments will be made by the Governor General on the advice of the Prime Minister. So lawyers who felt that they were worthy of silk had to basically wait for this notice to come out. They could apply. Unofficially, what used to happen was other Queen's Counsels would approach younger lawyers who they felt, well, they come up in the ranks, they're ready, they have a breadth of work under them. Other Queen's Counsels would approach them and say, well, now is a good time for you to apply. And they would apply to the Governor General, and or rather they would apply to the Attorney General, and the applications that would then sent to the Attorney General would be shortlisted by the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister would then send the list on to the Governor General, who would appoint persons with silk. So we got rid of the Governor General and we instead implemented a president. I have to pause for a second. I'm seeing some piece of wildness on the thread. I'm not here for any of the foolishness that's taking place in the comment thread. Like, I'm really not here for any of it and envy of it. Or you don't need to be abusive to each other like that. It's making no sense to me at all. None. Like 0 cents. Anyhow, back to the conversation about silk. So in 1964, the process was this. A notice would be sent out. It would be published in the Gazette. You would, once two other attorneys with silk approached you or agreed to support you, you would then make an application. You would send in the application. The Attorney General would then look at the applications and send a list on to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister would then advise the Governor General. So it says here, the Attorney General may also consult such other persons or bodies as he considers necessary, but he will be under no obligation to do so. So that's the Attorney General, right? Well, he could consult other people. You will notice that based on this, there is nothing here that says the Attorney General has to consult with the Chief Justice or the Law Association or any other body. So it is at the discretion of the Attorney General to consult with whoever he or she felt he or she wanted to consult with, and then send the list on to the Prime Minister, and then the Prime Minister would send the list on to the Governor General. So that's that level. Then in 1997, amendments were made, and changes would have been made by the then Attorney General Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj, and he fleshed it out a little bit more. So attorneys at law who wish to be considered for appointment as senior counsel are requested to submit their applications to the Attorney General by whatever date there, and applicants are expected to meet the following criteria. So from 1964, there was no list of criteria put out. In 1997, for the first time since the first order would have been put out in 1964, there are a list of requirements: professional eminence and distinction, which established them as leaders of the profession, sound intellectual ability, and a thorough, comprehensive, and up-to-date knowledge of the law and practice in the fields, outstanding ability as an advocate in the higher courts, highest professional standing, total professional integrity, maturity of judgment and balance, a high-quality practice with at least 10 years experience, and one based on demanding cases which allow the full measure of the above qualities to be demonstrated. So you have, seven criteria that lawyers need to meet. So they send the applications to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General then sends the list on to the Prime Minister. Now, this amendment here doesn't add anything else to the process besides criteria. So the process before, from 1964, is you send your application to the Attorney General. It then goes from the Attorney General to the Prime Minister, and then the Prime Minister sends it off to the Governor General. By 1976, it would be going to the Office of the President. So up to 1997, there is no obligation on the part of the Attorney General to consult with anybody outside of whoever he or she thinks he or she wants to consult with. Next amendment comes in 2000. And the amendments again are not even, there's nothing major. Attorneys who wish to be considered submit their applications to the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs by a particular date. Applicants are expected to meet the following requirements. It's the same 8 requirements. Attorneys who are desirous are requested to submit an application for consideration by the Attorney General. Nothing else has changed. Now, as much as I agree that our Constitution needs fixing, tweaking, amending, I am not going to jump out myself and say the whole Constitution needs amending on the basis of one process without talking you through the process. Now, based on these 3 documents here, and these 3 documents actually form part of an affidavit that Israel Khan has filed because he's taking the state to court over this whole silk process. And I actually agree that the process for awarding silk needs fine-tuning. Because based on these 3 documents that we've looked at here, the Attorney General alone could decide that he is going to create the shortlist, he or she is going to create the shortlist that goes on to the Prime Minister, and then the Prime Minister passes that shortlist on to the President. We remember what happened with Anand Ram Logan and Kamla Prasad Visesa. If, based on this process, Anand Ram Logan could have called for applications and he wouldn't need to have consulted anybody else if he didn't feel like consulting anybody else, because there is no stipulation that the Attorney General has to consult or must consult with anyone else. So the Attorney General, based on the process here, could easily get a list of applications, create a shortlist, send the shortlist to the Prime Minister, and then the Prime Minister sends it on to the Office of the President. A total of 2 persons having oversight of who gets silk or doesn't get silk, and then it goes on to the Office of the President. I think this process needs to be amended. I think that this process needs to have, let's say, a committee of people, the Attorney General, the Chief Justice, and at least one other person. So you have 3 people sitting on a panel with a clear rubric for assessing the applications that come before them. And so that rubric gets applied to each of the applications. And so you have a much fairer, much more transparent process. Now, if I didn't go and run down this affidavit, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't understand. And that is what got me annoyed with Oren. Because Oren, I feel, as somebody who writes in a column, as somebody who has positioned himself as a communications consultant and a media consultant and journalist, it is important for you to ensure that your audience could follow the argument that you're making. And I feel that the Express needs to work harder at ensuring that the arguments that it's making in its editorials, in its columns, and in its news stories at the front, they need to work harder on the kind of content they're putting out in the public domain. So that's me and Silk. So I'm hoping by now that you all understand better how the process for Silk goes, and that you understand, I guess, why I think the process needs to be improved and amended. So that way, every single time Silk is awarded, is not going to be a confusion about who should I get, who shouldn't get, whether the person worthy or not worthy. Because if the criteria clear and we know that there is for the most part independent panel or a panel of a range of people being a part of the process, then we don't have to think that, you know, is something underhanded and corrupt taking place. Okay, this conversation with Tobago Love still taking place on the comment feed. Tobago Love, it's why I addressed it at the start of my life, to indicate that there is no comparison, chalk and cheese, if that's the argument people want to go with. Right, so silk, right, we deal up with silk. We could done deal up with silk. What is I want to look at now? Earlier, people crossing the floor, left, right, and center. So it's all kind of wildness this week. Where we starting, boy? So CNC3 earlier today put up this post. Arima. So in Arima, as you all know, one of the counselors, there was a lone UNC counselor in Arima. Apparently, that counselor has tendered his resignation from the UNC and joined the PNM, right? Then, Kavish Seudal, apparently the UNC UTAM officer, has also joined the PNM. And all I remember last year when it had all that flood taking place, there was, oh my goodness, there was a counselor. What's his name again? Charles Sanka. Mr. Sanka from Kelly Village side. He was the lone UNC counselor to show up at a local government symposium, and he basically said that he was there to represent the people and to work with his line ministry. So we have at least 3 persons within the last couple months who would have stepped across from the UNC side over to the PNM. So of course, real bacchanal, everybody talking about it. So this is Mr. Sudial, what's his name? Kavish, right? This is Kavish, sorry, because it looks like it's Kavish and not Kavish. So this is Kavish Sudial here at the PNM Town Hall meeting last week, Thursday, in San Fernando. So it's Kazim Hussain, the Prime Minister, Kavish, and Stuart Young. What? How does a judge on the bench get silk? I'm not understanding our question, Slick Money Grip. I'm not understanding what you mean by how does a judge on the bench get silk. I'm so confused. We just went through the process. It's not making sense. Any case, we back here. So Kavish was at the meeting. There are a couple things that I want us to take a look at. So I went and I took a look at his profile, because to me, if you've left the UNC to come over to the PNM, I want to have a sense of what your positions were when you were in support of the UNC, because as you all well know, there are a number of policy positions that the PNM has as the sitting government that the UNC has never been in favor of as the opposition. So UNC has never really supported things like the various criminal legislations. Property tax is another area, an issue that the opposition does not support the government on. So I said, let me go and check out Kavish's profile as much as I can see, because if I'm not friends with a person, I can only have limited access. So First post I see, or this was one of the first posts. Can't decide which government official should win Clown of the Month. Shamfer, Marvin, Brian, Keith Scotland, Nian Gadsby Dolly, Lisa Morris Julian, Keith Christopher Rowley. Okay, all right, interesting. Then this was another post. Big Minister of Education, and she doesn't know the difference between adverse weather alert and riverine alert. Hashtag left foot, right foot. Imagine Keith Scotland riding his bicycle in this weather. All right. TKR would have win if Rowley wasn't in the cricket. The dates are on the post, Marsha. So this one is September 18, 2022. So I could go back to the others and tell you the dates. October 6th, 2022. Then, well, this is October 6th and 5th, 2022. Of course, these are only the public posts, right? I can't see private posts. I can only see public posts. Then September 18th, 2022. TKR would have win if Rowley wasn't in the cricket. That man is a blight. Then this is Independence Day. So I was particularly heartened to see that he was happy to wish us all a happy independence. Then June 8, 2022. Make sure and pay property tax so Imbert can enjoy his new 2022 Benz. And the silence of the Prime Minister and Minister of Energy. This is February 2022. The silence of the Prime Minister and Minister of Energy is deafening. Just goes to show how much they care about the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. This has to be the last straw. We're seeing an increase in murders, kidnapping, loss of job, and a failing healthcare system. Enough is enough. Time to come together. So I went back to the picture to make sure that it wasn't the Prime Minister and Stuart that he was standing up next to in the town hall meeting, because I thought that post and this post, real ironic, boy. Then this is the last one, right? Stephen McClatchy, Member of Parliament for Liberia. Is it that OJT interns are being faced with geographic discrimination? Why are some interns being paid on time while those that fall in the South region continue to receive late stipends? While you collect your salary every month, I suggest you wake up from your slumber and pay those interns what is rightfully theirs. So, let me pause for 2 seconds. Yes, correct, Beach. The energy thing would have been this post. Let me pull it back up. This would have been with respect to Paria, right? The diving accident, the diving tragedy. I almost don't know what to say, you know, and I'll tell you why I almost don't know what to say. I am aware that when I come out and make comments and statements, that there's a lot of repercussions, right? That my words have weight. So I try to be very careful about what I say and how I say what I say, because I don't necessarily, I don't have a problem with weighing in on issues, but I have to be careful about how I say the things that I mean to say and need to say. I have concerns about Kavish's about turn and desire to leave the UNC and come over to the PNM. I have no idea what his motivations are. I have no idea how genuine his shift from the UNC to the PNM is, especially when I see posts that talk about whether people are being discriminated against on the basis of geography, which is dog whistle as far as I'm concerned, because we like to pretend that certain parts of Trinidad and Tobago have only one ethnicity and the other parts of Trinidad and Tobago have the other ethnicity. We don't ever admit that the country actually has more of a balance in terms of how, you know, different ethnicities in different constituencies across the board. So here we have this chairman of the UNC Youth Arm. And there are a number of posts that I find little on the vitriolic side, little on the bitter side. And I'm like, okay. And you're being brought over to represent the interests of the People's National Movement. Now, if he comes over and decides that he's running for local government, it means that he's going to be a councillor representing the interests of people who support the party. And I have questions, I have challenges, I have concerns. I feel like, what is really going on here? That's my take on it. That's my position. Now, I know that it seems like this is a coup, right? That's the optics on it. Look, somebody who is clearly at the heart of the United National Congress, having stepped up and stepped forward, crossing the floor, joining our party. And so, of course, it suggests that the People's National Movement is a more appealing and attractive party for him. My question, after seeing them posts, is why? Why suddenly is the People's National Movement a more attractive party for you to be in? You were, for all intents and purposes, in the bosom of the United National Congress. You were in a position of influence as the chairman of the youth arm. So, did you fall out with people inside the UNC? I was told that you were Dave Tanku's advisor. Did you and Dave Tanku fall out? What did you fall out over? When Kamala made statements like Oreo, and when she made statements about slave names and who have slave names, and then recently all of the bitter, nasty things that would have been said about honorary degrees and people of African descent attacking East Indians and Arangues. What are your position on issues like that? What is your current position on property tax? Because I see in your posts, you believe that property tax is how the Minister of Finance is going to be able to purchase his car. There is no relationship there at all. The logic in that post escaped me entirely. Because whether or not people pay property tax, the Minister of Finance will be in a position to access the motor vehicle exemption as a minister and purchase wherever it is he wants to purchase. So, when I see that you have an issue with property tax and then you decide to cross the floor and join a party that has been very committed to and invested in bringing property tax back, I want to know how what brought you around to changing your mind and deciding that you could get on board with the People's National Movement. Little things like that. Because I need to grasp how you go from being in the bosom of the United National Congress and then crossing over to join the People's National Movement, not just as a regular member. So this is not a situation where you just decide, I resigning from my position in the UNC and I'm going to quietly take out membership in the People's National Movement. You make a very public announcement of your joining and aligning with the PNM. And there are questions. There are questions that need to be answered. So I don't know if you're going to be a candidate to be counselor, but if you are going to be a candidate to be counselor, I would think, Kavish, that some of the things that I've raised here are things that you need to address frontally with the voter base of the party that you have decided you are going to support and represent. All right? That's my 2 cents on the matter. Where I wanted to go to now, boy. Oh, yeah, man. We have a couple other things to talk about. We had to talk about hard work and sacrifice crew. With them. Whoops. I have things that I need to close down. Right. Okay. So we had to talk about the medical board. Did I remember to put that image here, boy? Or did I forget? I'll be so annoyed with myself if I forget. Let me go and pull up the image from... Yeah, here we go. So, during the week, last week, I was talking to Tech Guy and I said, I want to do a live about Avinash Sow. And so he sorted me out with a poster because I was going to do the live like Monday or Tuesday of last week. And I wanted Avinash Sow, Dr. Avinash Sow, to be collecting his honorary degree in small bamboo energy from, of course, the Pro Vice Chancellor of Small Bamboo Energy. So, I'll take a look at Tech Guy poster. Right? So there you have the Pro Vice Chancellor of Small Bamboo Energy awarding an honorary doctorate to Dr. Avinash Sow. Right? So now Dr. Sow has his own honorary degree in small bamboo energy. So this is Avinash. And all of us, we know, we've heard, we are aware of the nasty statements he has made about people of African descent. Right? Good. I wanted to, right, I have it here. Give me a second, let me pull it up. And then we're going to talk about it. So this is the Medical Board Act of Trinidad and Tobago. This is first page, and I'm going to look at a particular section of it closely. So it says, section 24.1. Where any member of the board or any holder of a temporary license has either before or after he is registered or licensed under this act been convicted either in the Commonwealth or elsewhere of an offense which if committed in Trinidad and Tobago would be punishable or on indictment, or is guilty of infamous or disgraceful conduct in a professional respect, such practitioner should be liable to be dealt with in the manner hereinafter provided. What I want all you to take a look at when we go back to the image is, or is guilty of infamous or disgraceful conduct in a professional respect. So here, right here, in the second to last line, you have, or is guilty of infamous or disgraceful conduct in a professional respect. Now, this section of the Medical Board Act I see it as applicable to Dr. Sau and, of course, to the issue of Dr. Murray, Dr. Conrad Murray. But I'm not getting into that just yet. I want to get into this one with Dr. Sau. So the medical board has this act, and it has this subsection 24(1) in its act. And the only thing the medical board managed to do is give Avina Sau a 1-week paid vacation, because that suspension ain't nothing else but an insult. So I wanted you, the public, to be clear that the medical board took 3 years. It's about 3 years, not so? Because Avinash made his statements either 2020 or 2021. So let me say about 2 years. 2 years the medical board take and decide all they're going to give Avinash Sau is a 1-week vacation from his job. He's not losing, he's not being suspended from being able to practice for any extended period of time. Basically, all that would have happened is his private practice would have been shut down for 1 week. He just had to close his private practice for 1 week. So, who knows? Because here's the thing, right? 34% of this population is of West African descent. If Avinash Sau is thinking that way about patients, people in whichever part of the country he's providing his services, whether it's South Trinidad, East, West, wherever, if they have an issue and he is the doctor, the specialist in the area that they should go to or ought to go to, or maybe he's closest for them to go to, how do you feel comfortable going to acquire medical assistance from somebody who thinks and speaks in the way in which he thinks and speaks about people of West African descent? But worse than that, here is a medical board, and the medical board has to operate under the Hippocratic oath, right? All doctors have to take the oath when they get into the practice. You have an act that gives you clear guidelines and parameters. This act would be housed within a constitution that respects different creeds and races and them being equal and having equity in this space. So you are a medical board with an act housed within a constitution that respects and enshrines equity, equality of creeds and races, and you have a doctor under your practice who came out and said the things that were said, and the most you could do was slap his wrist for 1 week. The medical board of Trinidad and Tobago not serious about life, and I find it shameful, I find it weak, I find it spineless, and the impression I get is that the medical board has decided that it is basically going to put on a papi show for the public, right? Make the country feel like they was taking this issue seriously, and thereafter what they really and truly did was protect one of their own. That's how it comes across to me. I find their 1 week suspension was entirely nasty. Best you didn't even bother. Now, I've seen a lot of people comparing and contrasting this situation with Dr. Gabriel and Dr. Sau. 2 wrongs do not make a right. Dr. Gabriel said things that she ought not to have said. She made racist statements as well. In my mind, if Dr. Sau was working with an RHA if he was a doctor in our national healthcare system, because remember, Avinash Saul is making the statements that he made in his private practice. If he was working in the public healthcare system, I'd be the first person to call for his firing. I would have been the first person to come out and say the Minister of Health has to ensure that Avinash Saul is fired from the public health system. And because I think the reason that the Ministry of Health has not come out and said anything is that Dr. Saul is not working in the public health system. If he is working in the public health system, he needs to be relieved of any duties that he would have. But Dr. Gabriel, she was in the public health system. She was an intern, and that's why she would have been fired. Because you can't make statements like that and continue to work in the public health system. So, if Dr. Saul, if Dr. Saul is functioning in any capacity in the public health system, he needs to be relieved of his duties. But my understanding is it was his personal practice, private practice, and that is why he was fired. Was that? Yes, she was wrong, but why fire her? Okay, this is so odd. So this is a question from Debbie Marquis. She says, yes, she was wrong, but why fire her? Debbie, let me explain why I would want Dr. Gabriel to be fired. Healthcare is a very sensitive thing. Healthcare, you have to put yourself in the hands of another person and trust that they are going to look after you. Essentially, your life is in the hands of other people when you get into the healthcare system. You have to trust that these people are going to put your life as a priority over everything else. So if anybody is suggesting that they believe that some lives are inferior to other lives, some people are inferior to other people, then that raises questions for whether or not people can trust the healthcare system. Let's say I have a GP, and I do have a GP. If my medical doctor, somebody came to me and said, you know, I hear your doctor saying so and so and so the other day about West African people or East Indian people or whichever persons he makes the comment about, I would leave that doctor. I would find another doctor, because I'd be wondering and I'd be worried, especially if I'm from the ethnic group that the doctor has a problem with. I'd be wondering if at any point in time that prejudice that the doctor has is going to impact on the quality of health care I'm going to get. And we live in a country where we have heard stories after story after story about the kind of health care people get at the hands of doctors that have demonstrated prejudice. And so because Dr. Gabriel would have been caught out publicly making the statements that she would have made within the public healthcare system, also to given what your Hippocratic oath says, I could see why she would have been fired. 100%. 100%. I could see why she would have been fired. In my mind, if you encounter, and in Dr. Gabriel's case, she's a medical doctor. I think that kind of attitude, racist attitudes of that kind, are so important to how we undertake our responsibilities and duties to other persons, that we shouldn't even have teachers with racist biases and prejudices. We shouldn't even have teachers like that in our public education system, because when you harbor those kinds of prejudices against other persons and other groups, it impacts on the kind of service you will deliver. And Dr. Gabriel was also an intern, so I think where she stood in the hierarchy of things, the fact that she was in a public healthcare system, the nature of the statements that were made, all of those things would have been why she would have been fired. And Dr. Sau, I believe, once he was working in the public healthcare system, if he had made those statements as a doctor in the public healthcare system, he would have been fired as well. Do I think we don't have racists in the healthcare system? Marlene, of course I think there are other people that are racist in the system, but do we have their thoughts and words on record? That would be the issue. Whether or not we have those things on record to be able to prove that these persons are racist. If there is evidence, then you have grounds on which to fire them. But the point that I was trying to make here is that the medical board could and should and ought to have taken a much stronger stance with Avinash Sau. He should have been suspended for a longer period of time. He should not have been able to practice anytime soon, because what he said was reprehensible. It was disgusting. What? Send him back to Guyana? Okay. I had no idea that he was Guyanese. Lord have mercy. That's a problematic statement. Okay, where we going to now? So we've done, give me 2 seconds. THA, Silk, Medical Board, LGE bacchs. Alright, we could spend 2 minutes and say some nice positive things here about this goodly gentleman.
Commissioner of India, friends, family. As my 90th birthday approached, there were many suggestions from Oma and the children as to how they wanted to celebrate this day. Some of them said, let us go on a cruise. Others said, let us celebrate the whole thing in the Maldives. One of them actually said, let's take him to Disneyland. And I thought, she probably heard the adage. Once a man, twice a child. My desire was not to be anywhere else on this my 90th birthday than to be with my family and dear friends whom I've neglected for so many years while I was consumed with politics. Hence, this function was organized by family who worked their butts off. That's the part I was wanting to say, the butts part. Who worked their butts off to bring this function to fruition. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart, and my wife's also, for being here today. I'm grateful to those who have been responsible for helping me to exceed my biblical allotment of 70 years by 20 years. I must tell you of this incident concerning my longevity. 2 former sugar workers, and I see them have a lot of sugar cane around. 2 former sugar workers were arguing over the reason why I lived so long. And one of them said, boy, somebody up there likes him. The other fellow said, no, he's stupid. Nobody up there like him. Somebody up there know him. And if he should come up here, the first thing he will do is ask for shorter hours and higher wages for the angels. And if he doesn't get it, the first thing he will do is strike, lock out, go so, and everything. So please, leave that fellow right down there. And that's why I'm living so long.
Okay, so that's a couple minutes of an event that happened at the Diwali in Nagar earlier last week, I should say, because this week is a new week. So I think it would have been last week, Tuesday or Wednesday, thereabouts. Mr. Panday turned 90 on Thursday. And, well, I was seeing the comments. I know different people have different positions. And yes, Tisha Marie, people real jumping out themselves tonight in these comments. I'm seeing so many unfortunate comments in the comment thread that I have to pause and think a couple minutes. Yes, right. So the part of Trinidad and Tobago I'm from is the constituency that Panday used to be the MP of. So I don't know how we end up with Ravi Ratiram as an MP, but I mean, so life does go. So Panday used to be the MP for my part, the constituency that I grew up in, that I was able to vote in when I came of voting age. Whether you like him or don't like him, whether you are in support of the UNC or not in support of the UNC, you cannot deny that Basdeo Panday is a man of immense charisma, and he has a great sense of humor and delivers a speech very well. At first I was going to start the live with that speech and saying happy birthday to him. So happy birthday, Mr. Panday. I'm hoping that you get to 100. I really think it would be great if you are around to hit the 100 here with us in Trinidad and Tobago, because there was a lot of firsts that Panday would have achieved, and back in the 90s he would have been the first Prime Minister of East Indian descent. He would have been the first Hindu Prime Minister that the country would have had. And there were a couple of the firsts. I don't remember all of the firsts now. And so, there was a lot that Panday did that was positive. There's also a lot that Panday did that was not so positive. And some of that actually ended up in the newspapers today. I'm ready to talk about those things yet, but what I am going to talk about is we're in the month of Indian arrival. As a matter of fact, the holiday is going to be celebrated on Tuesday. And there were a couple things that I wanted to talk about, a couple things that I wanted to look at. And only know me, I always like to tackle things from a historical perspective. We ain't starting with the history just yet. So I asked Tech Guy to do a poster for me, and I tell him, what I wanted was a range of persons who make headlines in the last couple weeks and months from the East Indian community. And he said, well, send some names. And I said, well, all right, definitely Panday, because it's his 90th birthday this week. Definitely Sanka and Siudial, because they crossed the floor from the United National Congress. Definitely Richie Sukai. Definitely Pundit Sat. And definitely honorary PhD awardee of the week, Avina Sau. Why tech guy put Julian John there in my poster? I don't know, and tech guy need licks. But let me start with a couple things. This Tuesday will make it 178 years since the arrival of the first boat with indentured laborers. The National Council for the Celebration of Indian Culture had a reading a couple evenings ago. They had an event for writers, female writers of East Indian descent. And I looked at the poster, I looked at the female writers that they chose to celebrate, and I laughed to myself for a number of reasons. One, I am of East Indian descent, and I am a published author. But I know that I will never be invited to an event by the NCIC because the NCIC is not yet evolved enough to accept that the East Indian identity in Trinidad and Tobago has evolved. The NCIC, like many other East Indian related interest groups in this country, still is stuck and invested in an idea of purity when it comes to discussing Indian and Indian identity. So I wanted to talk about how exactly we got to 1845, because 1845 didn't happen in a vacuum. So all of this is I was talking to tech guy about, right? And I say, this is what I want to discuss, etc., etc. So earlier this year, as a matter of fact, for several months, the People's National Movement has done a number of things to position itself as being more appealing to members of the United National Congress, or maybe members of the East Indian voting base in the country. So there would have been, whoops, just now, why is that still there? That shouldn't be there. I was supposed to delete that, right? So we had the election or the nomination of Christine Kangaloo as the first Indo-female president of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Shortly after that, we had Richie Sukai. Not the first anything, but Richie is the son of a prominent Indo-Trinbagonian family in central Trinidad, and he would have, based on my understanding, actually screened before the UNC to become a candidate for one of their seats, and he was rejected. And so the People's National Movement would have considered him to be a senator, and he is now a senator on the government side. And that caused no amount of concern on the opposition's part, because there's always ever been these tensions between both of the major ethnic groups here about who is accepted, who is not accepted, who better than whom, who greater than, etc., etc. And then I said, after looking at all of those things, also after looking at this foolish headline this week And I don't think I'm going to ever get over the fact that the Guardian put up a headline, front page, East Indians under attack, on the front page of the newspaper, like if it was the most normal thing on the face of the earth to do. There's nothing normal about a headline like that. So in light of all of those things and the way in which folks would have gotten on about the honorary degree and the way in which we like to talk about who bright, who not bright, who does work hard and sacrifice, who don't work hard and sacrifice, I said, let me come here and talk to you again. So, where the book cover? Right. A lot of what I'm going to talk about, I was able to get from this book. So I made sure that I put the book up so that whoever is interested, you will see the name of the book. It's called The Slave Master of Trinidad. It's written by Selwyn Cudjoe, and it is about an estate owner, a slave master here called William Harding Burnley, who owned a lot of land in Trinidad and Tobago. And William Burnley influenced a lot of policy in Trinidad during the 1800s. He was one of the persons instrumental in getting immigrant labor into the island. So I wanted to start with a couple of things. So you have the name of the book. You could always get it. You could get it from paper-based. You could get it from Tales and Treasures. Or if you're into electronic books, you can get it off Kindle, Amazon Kindle. Is there on Kindle for those of you who want to order it from Kindle. Right. So everybody knows that the Fatal Rosac arrived in 1845, right? May 30th, 1845. It came with 225 East Indians to the island. En route, and it took about 3 months because it was about 100 days out at sea. En route, 6 people died, right? So it got here, 225 persons of East Indian descent, 6 Indians died en route to the colony. And the voyage was part of a policy that would have started since 1836 in Guyana. Why am I telling you all this? Why is it important for me to talk about this? You see some of the hate comments on the comment thread today, some of the things that people saying on the comment thread today. That's why I'm going to talk to you about this, because all you need to understand and grasp exactly what led to East Indian indentured labor here. 1834, Great Britain would have decided that it was ending slavery, right? And because Great Britain decided it was ending slavery and it was going to have a 4-year or 6-year apprenticeship period, slave owners or estate owners in the Caribbean realized that they had 4 to 6 years to be able to utilize the labor of former enslaved people. So from 1834, as immediately as that, from 1834, you had planters and estate owners in the Caribbean attempting to get labor from wherever they could get labor from. First, they started smuggling people from other parts of the Caribbean. So, all of you who think that human trafficking and bringing people from Venezuela and bringing people from other Caribbean islands into Trinidad only started last year or 2018 or whenever we started having plenty immigrants, illegal immigrants here. No. Since the 1800s, we have been smuggling people illegally into Trinidad for the purpose of labor. Now, the planters were very worried that with emancipation, they would be at the mercy of a black working population. for a range of reasons. Number one, the white population here, it would have been a small population, and they wanted to have another population of workers that would function as a buffer between them and the former enslaved people. So you had nervousness about a large black population and a minority white population. That was one problem. Then the next problem was, when these folks are emancipated, how are we going to entice them to continue to work on the estates? So a range of solutions cropped up. One solution was smuggling people from other Caribbean islands and bringing them in. So basically, you had people who had boats and they would just go to these other islands in the Caribbean and get people who were willing to come and work in Trinidad, because wages here were higher than wages would have been. So the wages for the apprentices, for instance, because from 1834 onwards, apprentices would have been paid wages to work on the estates, to do task work on the estates. So they would go kidnap people or bring people into the island illegally to be able to supplement the workforce. Thereafter, the same guy, Burnley, arranged for a ship to go between Africa and Trinidad, from Sierra Leone to Trinidad, and bring bonded Africans here. So about 10,000 persons of West African descent who would have been freed when slave ships were held and taken back to Africa, because they couldn't reintegrate into their ethnic groups in Africa. They were then invited to come back to the Caribbean, but as bond labor, as free labor, and work on estates. So we got about 10,000 bonded Africans, and they would have come and settled in parts of Trinidad that they named Sierra Leone, St. Helena, Gasparillo, oh my goodness, where else? There are about five or six different places that they would have come, and they would have resettled in large numbers, right? Those are the places that I remember off the top of my head. And so these would have been folks who left Sierra Leone willingly and came here from around the 1840s. The other set of immigrants that Burnley and other planters of that time period arranged to have come here to supplement labor was also African American slaves. They were offered, Britain offered them the option to come here and settle, and they did come and settle in Deep South Trinidad, and they would have been functioning as free labor in Deep South Trinidad. So from 1834 all the way up to 1844, there was constant panic by the planters in Trinidad, especially the entire Caribbean, but definitely in Trinidad, because of emancipation. The issue was, with an emancipated population in a colony that had so much free land and available land for people to go and settle on and do their own farming and gardening on, how were we going to be able to keep that population working on the estates and working on the estates at a reasonable price to make sugar continue to be profitable? So the focus always was on trying to increase the labor population here, so that way they could pay the lowest possible wages to workers, and so keep sugar being as profitable as possible. So I see some people there saying the Americans. Yes, correct, good. All you following the thing. So where that image, boy? Right. On the 24th of September, and this is in 1844, Let me put myself back up on the screen. Right. Let me small up myself. So on the 24th of September, the Port of Spain Gazette, what we now call the Trinidad Guardian, it used to be called the Port of Spain Gazette, announced the great news. 2,500 hill coolies were destined to come to Trinidad. The newspaper implored the planters to make adequate preparations for the new arrivals. It suggested that the planters use the houses that the ex-slaves had vacated. There's another newspaper article, and a bit of an article I want to read from for earlier. Right, I find it. So, just when Sierra Leone was turning out to be barren soil in terms of recruitment, so remember I was just telling earlier that we were bringing in Africans from Sierra Leone. So we've got about 10,000 thereabouts, give or take, and the planting population here, the estate owners here, felt that it wasn't enough. They needed more. They needed a much larger labor force. So they felt that we ain't getting enough labor from Sierra Leone. So the example of East Indians going off to Mauritius and British Guyana proved to be welcome news for the planters of Trinidad. In July 1844, the Port of Spain Gazette revealed that a plan had been drawn up by the West India body in England and George William Hope, Under Secretary of State for the Colonies, for the bringing of Indians from India to relieve the labor shortage on the island. However, on July 25th, Warner there's he would have been was he the governor? I think he was the governor. It's Governor Charles Warner. However, on July 25th, if he wasn't the governor, he was the attorney general, something like that, let the cat out of the bag when at a meeting called by the Presbyterians at the Greyfriars Church to discuss the ecclesiastical bill. So I think he was the attorney general. So Attorney General Charles Warner, 25th of July, announced at a meeting that we are shortly expecting a large increase in our population by the importation of coolies. Now, me personally, I'm not keen on using the word, but it's there in the text. That's what they would have written and said at that point in time. One of the reasons I like and I'm recommending the book is that Cudjoe went to newspaper sources of that era from Trinidad and pulled up from the newspapers actual speeches and actual accounts from the newspaper, and that is part of the documental evidence that he has in the book. So I was glad to see that there were direct quotations from the newspaper of the era. So July 1844, we would have known, so a whole year in advance, the colony would have known that we were going to be importing bond labor from India. The part that I'm going to read here now is going to be important with respect to what would have led to the beginning of tension, right? So, as if in anticipation of this move, let me put myself back on the screen, sorry. As if in anticipation of this move, at a special meeting on June the 29th, Burnley's, so this is the estate owner, William Burnley, his Agricultural and Immigration Society adopted a resolution to be debated at its general meeting on July 12th that demanded an immediate reduction in the money expenditures of all the sugar estates in the country. That's very important. The minute the announcement was made in July, so July 1844, so they're aware, and in June a meeting is held. So at the end of June a meeting is held, and the resolution that is adopted in that meeting is to immediately reduce wages of the workers here in preparation for the arrival of bond labor from India. And so those two things, this need to bring in more labor as soon as emancipation kicked in, that need to bring in more labor, the insistence that the industry can't survive with the labor that you currently have, the insistence that the current labor force too expensive, too lazy, too any number of very nasty things. I guess they were running their own propaganda to be able to change the narrative. So those things would have been said repeatedly over and over and over. And then by July 2nd, 1844, a whole year in advance of the arrival of the first immigrants, a resolution would have been adopted by the Agriculture and Immigration Society that all estate owners would immediately reduce wages. Was that why I let her bring plantains to me? So that's important. It's critical, actually. So imagine, emancipation has come. You were working for free your entire life. Eventually, with the end of emancipation, you are now allowed to charge for your labor. And just as you get to the point where you and the rest of the labor force have managed, because the labor force in Trinidad at that point in time organized itself very strategically, and they were able to strike from time to time and force wages to be reasonable. So that's why Trinidad in the 1830s and 1840s had some of the highest labor wages in the entire Caribbean. And so the other islands where there was a large labor force, people would leave those islands and come to Trinidad to be able to work illegally, because the wage rates here were much higher than the wage rates were in other parts of the Caribbean. So we had people charging oftentimes 50 cents a task, depending on how specialized the task was. They would charge between 50 cents to $1 for a task, and a task usually lasted half a day. So you had a laboring population that was in a position to be earning $1 a day for their wages. Now $1 a day doesn't sound like much to us now, but $1 a day back in the 1830s and 1840s, for people who had not been able to earn a living before, $1 a day was plenty. And when you're in a situation where you have land that you can occupy and run your garden on, as well as do task labor at $1 a day, that made the enslaved population here, or the former enslaved population, so the newly emancipated population, it made them too independent. So the planter class had a problem with how independent the emancipated population was, because they couldn't be forced to work anymore. They were in a position that they could name the price for the labor that they're going to perform. And because the labor force here was smaller than the labor force in other parts of the Caribbean, the labor force could often hold the estate owners to ransom. And so, to be able to offset all of those things, immigrant labor, and at first immigrant labor from the other parts of the Caribbean, then immigrant labor from West Africa and North America, and then eventually 1845, May 30th, immigrant labor from the East Indies, from India. And there is one more little excerpt I want to read for you towards the bottom of this page. The newspaper, so that would have been the Port of Spain Gazette. The newspaper also urged the planters to be considerate about the feelings of the ex-slaves and remarked, "Up to the present hour, much credit is due to the native population for the way in which they have behaved as regards the immigrants introduced from various sources." So the newspaper here is saying that the former slave population hadn't been hostile to all of the introductions of other laborers from other spaces. True, there was no just ground for jealousy, for Trinidad is large enough and can afford employment for everyone. And then the final paragraph, as far as the ex-slaves were concerned, the pending arrival of the Indians merely represented the coming of another set of workers onto the island. Their major concern revolved around how best to accommodate themselves to their new condition of freedom by becoming owners of land and useful members of their society. So essentially, what the newspaper on September 24th, 1844 was saying, the ex-slave population, they weren't hostile to anybody, and all they were focused on at that point in time was becoming accustomed to being free and becoming owners of land and becoming useful members of their society. And this is the takeaway point I want some of you to have. Patrice said it best when she said, "Drink water and mind your business." There is a lot of race talk. There is always a lot of race talk because that's in nature of our politics here, right? And we have allowed our politics to get very tribal. We have allowed our politics to become very divisive. And yes, there are all kinds of reasons for us to be concerned about the dignity that we get treated with by other persons. But I want us here, the regulars here, to become focused on enjoying your freedoms, to become focused on owning whatever it is you want to own, house, land, property, a new job, better education, but to become focused on owning the things that you want to own and to become focused on being useful members of your society. Leave other folks who want to be bitter and who want to be narrow-minded and who want to be focused on a particular kind of existence. Let them do their do. Let them do their do. You don't have to be a part of that at all. So, Tuesday, Indian Arrival Day, and I hope you all will remember a range of things on Tuesday. That the planters here was hella concerned that they would be at the mercy of an emancipated labor force. And this is a space that has always ever been able to accommodate every single group that came to provide labor. And we leave it at that. So I see Chris Francois carrying on his own class. Boy, all is the worst, though. All is the absolute worst. So I hope you all enjoyed. I'm taking a break. I'm going on hiatus. I think the next time I will return will be around emancipation. I will post from time to time on my New Source page, but I am going to be taking a bit of a break so I could kind of recover and thing. So it was nice. I hope you all learned something. I hope you all enjoyed the time and you all take it easy. Let me go and check and see what these two slackers up to now. All right? Take care, folks. Bye.